Today we're with Miss Inez Vera. Inez Vera is a proud mom, daughter, sister, Dia, and friend. She's a first generation college graduate, earning both her undergrad and graduate degree from CCSU. Started her journey at Central through the Latino Concast program, where she completed 5 weeks of the academic preparation before starting CCSU in the fall of 2007. As a student, she served on the executive board of the Latin American Student Organization and professionally has served as a mentor and advisor to both Lasso and Colada. She currently serves as the director of the Academic Center for Student Athletes. In her current role as the director, she works collaboratively with the Department of Athletics to ensure students are meeting NCAA eligibility requirements. She's an advocate for students to make sure they are effectively working towards achieving their desired academic and athletic goals. Ines is looking forward to connecting and sharing her story with you all today. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. How shall we start?
You want to tell us about your background and your life from?
Yeah, so thank you all for being here the day before there's no classes, but big break. So yeah, my name is Inez and I am a proud daughter. And so my father was in the military. And so believe it or not, I was born in Germany. Because my dad was serving in the army, and so he was stationed in Germany. So born in Germany, lived there for about 2 years, and then we moved to Puerto Rico. And so I was in Puerto Rico till about second grade. And then for employment opportunities, my dad decided to move to the States. And so family is super important to me. And so whenever I start something, I always say I'm a proud daughter because my parents sacrificed a lot for me. And so did my family and my siblings. So I am a proud mom. I have a 2-year-old daughter. Her name is Mariah. And she's literally a whole vibe. Like she is just so much fun, has so much energy. Sometimes I just question where she gets the energy from because it's like 10 o'clock at night and she's still dancing. And so her favorite thing right now is Daddy Yankee Limbo. It's like my girl literally dance. I'll show you videos after and do the limbo because she's obsessed with Daddy Yankee. And I'm like, Mommy and Papi, keep up with the times. Like there's other artists, but to them it's Daddy Yankee. So yeah, I when I think about, my journey, I am an ESL student. English was not my first language, and so navigating the education system, not only in America, but I lived up north and down south. And so I was the only Puerto Rican in elementary school in South Carolina, and everyone thought I was Mexican because they didn't know what Puerto Rican, they had never met a Puerto Rican before. So in their frame of reference, every Latino or Latina was a Mexican. And so navigating that in the South, and then college, right? I still think I was young, right? But I was in college a while ago now. And so thinking of my experiences, not only getting accepted to college, but my undergraduate experience that shaped my graduate and my professional work. So
You're talking about being an ESL student. Yesterday, I had a breakdown with her because I was like, they are talking so fast. I don't understand what they are saying. And it was so hard. Even thinking about it, I got because I'm here for a while already, but I still learn English. So like when I go to class and I'm working groups and they're talking too fast and like they don't finish a sentence and I'm like, I can't communicate.
Yeah. And where are you from?
I'm from Brazil.
Brazil. Okay, Portuguese. Okay, nice. And so I would just encourage you to tell people to slow down. It's okay. You just ask them in a polite manner. I work with a lot of international students in athletics, and that's something that we deal with a lot, right? You're in group settings or just the American culture. Like I had a student yesterday tell me, what's this Thanksgiving break? Like, what are we doing? What do I have to do? And I said, you don't have to do anything. This is the holiday. Because again, Thanksgiving is an Americanized holiday. That's not something that's celebrated worldwide. So I always encourage students, to to speak up because then they don't know and then they'll continue and then you internalize that, right? And so then you get frustrated or then you start to feel like you don't belong here or you're the only one struggling when I have students that speak English that still struggle, right? So I would, yeah, I definitely hear that. And still now, as a professional and having learned the language, there are times that I hear words and I'm like, what is this? What are we talking about? Or I mispronounce something. I'm notorious at that. I read everything in Spanish. So even my students, they have American names and they get a Spanish name from Messina because that's how I read it. And so, it's something where they say like, when we speak multiple languages, it's code switching. So at home, you're speaking in Spanish, but then when you enter the workforce or classes, you have to speak in English, and then you have to go speak in Spanish, or so you go back and forth. And so we are brilliant and we are intelligent because we have the ability to do that.
It's not only limited to just languages, it's going to be the subdialects of a language.
Mhm.
Because for me, I'm in the Caribbean, it's like English is the primary language of the Caribbean, but every island has their own patois, their own slang, and then their secondary language. If you are privileged enough that your parents say, to hell with it, I'm teaching the kid the language.
It's so true. Even for Latinos, right? Like there's different wordings depending on the dialect and the country you're from. So, so yeah, no, that's absolutely so true.
It is because when I learned Spanish for like Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. So when I, I had to speak like with someone that's like from Mexico or like Peru, you're just like, what? Wait, that's not like, for example, habichuela and frijoles, frijoles, I think so.
Mhm.
So the way that I learned was habichuela, habichuela, habichuela. And then when they said frijoles, I was like, what is that? And then I learned that it's the same thing, just a different word, but so it's like, I don't know, they Spanish too kind of.
Yeah.
The same thing with pasteles. To them, it's something sweet. To me, it's something green. It's like a food.
Yeah, it's so true.
When I was in Nassau, I used to have a friend from Colombia, one from Peru, and one from Mexico.
Mm.
And I used to avoid certain words with each of them because, like, where I come from means something bad, but to them, it's
Yeah.
a mosquito.
Yep.
So some people would say, wait, where are you from? Because they couldn't figure it out because I was trying to avoid all those from
Little
each
things,
country,
yeah.
and then I would it made it harder for them to figure out where I was from.
Mm.
You also say, I think in your introduction that you were part of Lasso and Colada.
Yeah. So, so when I reflect on that experience, so Lasso and Colada were two really large organizations. And so, in my perspective, I wasn't gonna do Colada because I wasn't gonna dance in front of anyone, right? I was like super, super shy and said, nah, like that's not for me. And with Lasso, I really didn't get involved until an incident happened on campus. And so they had the Recorder, which was the school newspaper. They printed a comic strip and it was of a young Latina girl getting peed on in a closet. And um, that was supposed to be funny. And we were all like, this isn't funny. And what made it really uncomfortable was that I was probably one of the only Latinas in my classes and professors were asking me about it. And so Lasso at the time with the Women's Center and some other organizations decided to protest it. And so that is what sparked my activism and my willingness to get involved because I very much came to college to really focus on my studies because I don't think I mentioned I didn't get accepted to college. So I had to do the Latino Concast program as a alternative admission route. And so for me, it was just so important to focus on my academics that I didn't want to get involved with extracurriculars because I didn't see that benefiting me at the time. And so once this incident happened, that's when I found my voice and I found the need to get involved, and that representation was so important. And so through that experience, I got involved with Lasso, and yeah, it was just, I had a mentor at the time, Shani Lopez, who was I I think she was the vice president or the president, and she's like, Inez, can you just help us with minutes? And so I started off as a volunteer, then became the secretary, vice president, and then my senior year was the president of the organization. And I had so much fun with Lasso. I took that role as my second family and supporting my peers. I was always known as Mama Inez. I was the one that was making sure everyone was going to class, doing their homework, eating, and so yeah, that's how I got involved with Lasso. And then what we ended up doing, because budgets kept getting cut, we had to do our end of the year concert in collaboration with Colada. So Golazo became a thing. And so we would join forces and get some financial assistance to host this really big event. And so that's how Colada kind of joined. And we were, our membership kind of intertwined, where some Lasso members were a part of Colada and vice versa. And so there was always a lot of support in supporting each other's organization. And then just having representation on campus, right? So we would host events and we would ask if Colada would come to perform and do certain things. And so when I think about it, a lot of my friends now as an adult all come from Lasso and Colada, right? These are the people we formed a really great bond and have a lot of good memories through our involvement in Lasso. We just had fun.
I'm still friends with people from Lasso. I just
From your
in
hands.
Lasso.
We just had a really good time and we took advantage of the opportunities. And so networking, going to conferences. I had never been to a conference before. I was an athlete in high school, and so I had gone to tournaments and done that type of stuff, but I never had been in a space filled with Latinos all trying to, all looking for networking and professional development. And so through Lasso, we got involved with that. We would go to student leadership conferences, and it was just a bunch of Latino students in college, non-Latino students who would just get together. We would go to different workshops and stuff. And so through that experience, we learned the system. And so we would keep asking for funding so that we can go. And so the executive board, we went to national conferences. So we went to San Diego, we went to Chicago. And again, as a college student, this was all paid for. All we had to do was show up, but they paid for our flights, our hotels, the meals. And so my senior year, there was a group of us, and HAPU, which is the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, is having a conference in Puerto Rico. And we were like, let's do it. It was really expensive, but we were able to go through the Student Government Association and request funding. And I think there was about 12 of us that were selected to go. So it was, again, it was a perfect way to end my senior year and my presidency as in Lasso and get to go to Puerto Rico, all paid for by the university, to be able to engage in workshops and have conversations about how to support Latino students while they're in college and what we can do to retain students. So it's fun.
I was in Lasso. We went to California, New York, Hawaii.
It was fun. We actually had a student, he was, I forget his,
Dennis.
no, it was I think his name was Alex. He was a Jewish student. And he had never ate pork. And in Puerto Rico, he was tempted to, and he ate some pork. And he's like, man, my rabbi's gonna smell this on me. But he really just wanted to experience it. He's like, it smells way too good. Like I need to, he had been, yeah.
Was it
And
okay?
so I think he was, you know what, he may have had a little sweat attack afterwards on the sodium, but he was able to experience the culture with us, and so we had a pretty good time.
When you lived in Germany for 2 years, did you also learn German there or just Spanish?
Yeah, no, I don't. So it's funny because my father was born in Puerto Rico, my mom was born in New York, and so Spanish was their primary language. And so my dad learned German because he was stationed out there. And so when my mom married him, she moved to Germany and she had to learn it. So I do remember like they would speak in German and it was like their code language because none of us knew it, right? So like they knew we spoke Spanish, we spoke English. So eventually they started speaking in German and even like, mommy, Bobby, what are you guys talking about? Because nobody knows.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
For me growing up, it was the secondary language they used as their code language. So
Uh-huh.
like I picked up a couple words, but I never got the expression. This word means this, has none of that.
Exactly. So, I was so young, I don't remember much, but my parents always tell stories. And like, even now, my mom is like, well, the Germans always leave their drinks outside. And my dad is like, okay, like, but she's using that as a reference for, almost 30 years ago. But, so yeah, my dad will speak it. And my mom knows a little bit. I have an older sister and she went to primary school out there. So she, I think, knows a little bit, but it's been so long. So
You were two.
I was like 2.5, maybe 3 when we left.
What sport did you do, by the way?
I played volleyball.
Volleyball.
Yeah, I played volleyball in high school. And again, going into high school, it's almost like I've always been given two options, right? It was like going into high school, you either tried out for volleyball or you tried out for the drill team. And I told you I don't dance in front of people. So the drill team was like performing. I said, mm-mm. So I tried out for volleyball and I had played volleyball in South Carolina. And so, yeah, I did that for 4 years. And again, it was a great way to get connected and get involved. Because I tend to be shy, but that gave me a group of girls that I was able to connect with.
So you went to school in Puerto Rico too. So what differences like did you see between like schools there and schools here? I guess like the environment, like how comfortable people maybe.
Yeah. So in Puerto Rico, I went to a private school. And so we had to wear uniforms. And so when I moved to the States, we didn't have to wear uniforms, but mommy and Bobby made us wear uniforms. So I was that girl in school wearing a uniform because that's what my mom and my dad knew. That was their reference. So, and in Puerto Rico, our school was K through 12. And so my oldest sister was in school with me. She was like my protection. And so I, the food was different for sure. I remember, I enjoyed eating lunch in Puerto Rico. And then when I came to Connecticut, I was like, what is this?
The food was like regular food.
It was
Food at
our,
home.
yeah, it was our cultural
Rice and
food.
beans,
Yep,
yeah.
exactly. And so, and I remember the school had different buildings and it was outside. So there was a courtyard. And so you were able to walk outside, outdoors, and coming to Connecticut. We also moved to Connecticut in December. So it was
I know what you think. But when I came to the US, it was in December. It's start of December, and I'm just experiencing winter. Yeah. Oh.
Worst time to come. So yeah, so I remember being scared of the trees because in Puerto Rico, like our trees were green and had leaves and were beautiful. And then you come to Connecticut and it's dark and they looked scary to me. I remember being really, really scared of the trees.
Without leaves, because it was already.
Yeah, because it was winter. So, and so, but one thing in Puerto Rico, everything seemed so much more relaxed. I never felt like I was being rushed. I never felt like I was being assessed. And I never had to identify as a Puerto Rican, right? We were all, and I had cousins who were redhead with freckles and cousins who were dark with tight curls, right? And so I never really had to think about what it was to be a Latina or Puerto Rican. When I came to the States, it was just like, oh, what are you? What do you want? And I didn't speak English, so I was just looking at people, just looking at them. And so coming to Connecticut as part of ESL, I was going to one school. Then I think I went to homeroom with everyone, didn't talk to anybody because I didn't speak English. And then I was bused to a separate school, and that's where all of the ESL learners would go for the day. And then I'd come back right before the end of the school day. So, again, in December, having to get on a school bus and going back to forth. At the time, I didn't really think too much of it. It was like, oh, I get to leave school, but I was leaving school to go to another school for a short period. But I was so comfortable in the ESL classes, and so when I went, so we moved to Connecticut from Puerto Rico, and then we went to South Carolina. And so from Connecticut to South Carolina, I was so far behind because I had spent time trying to learn the language. So I wasn't taking academic classes, right? And so by the time I get to South Carolina, I was in middle school, and I remember they were doing long division um, math.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I
Wait a
was
minute.
like, hold on, what? I was like, I don't, let's just go back to the basics, right? And so that was a huge learning gap for me. Um, my dad, I give my dad a lot of credit because he was very disciplined and would sit there and study with me and help me with my homework and just make sure I understood it. Um, and so I was a little behind in South Carolina, but then when we came back to Connecticut for high school, I was advanced. So it was like sophomore year of high school, and I was like, I did this like 3 years ago. Like I was ahead and I was comfortable, but I wasn't being challenged.
I know exactly what you say, because again, when I came up, some of the stuff that I did either in high school, I know I had a course in high school, let's say additional math that I ended up doing for CXC. Came up here freshman year, I had to take pre-calculus with trig. Majority of the stuff that was covered in the course, the stuff I did 3, 4 years back, and I
Mhm.
wasn't really challenged per se.
But did they give you a placement test to figure out where to go?
I don't
No.
think those.
They didn't give me a placement test. I remember my dad went with me to like the first, like to sign up, right? And they said, well, we'll put her in college prep. And so I was in a college prep cohort, but there was no placement. And so, but I also, and that's when I think about those, when we think about how we put students in a track and then that's their trajectory. At that time, had someone placed me, had someone challenged me, maybe I could have been taking AP courses, maybe I could have been taking honors courses. But I think systems are used sometimes to oppress us and they don't try to find out what our strengths are, right? When I went to South Carolina, they were quick to tell me, hey, you may have to stay behind a year, right? But when I came back to Connecticut, it was just like, okay, like take the college prep courses. I think you'll do fine there. And I wasn't challenged academically almost until like my junior year of high school, maybe senior year,
Wow.
where I felt like, okay, this is getting a little more difficult. Um, in South Carolina, there's a very militant background in everything. So we were always on time. It was yes, sir, no, ma'am, polite manners. And then when I came to East Hartford, Connecticut, I was like, whoa, like the middle school is huge. Um, I think like my first day there may have been a fight in the hallway. Students were talking back to the teachers, and I had not been experienced. I had not experienced that in a while. So it was a little bit of a culture shock. My middle school in South Carolina, I think we had like 150 students, and I go to East Hartford Middle School, and I think there's like 400 or 500 students there. And that was only 2 grades. In South Carolina, it was 3 grades. So yeah, there was a lot there, but
So that affected you when you wanted to apply to college. You had to take a summer program.
yeah. So again, played volleyball 4 years. I was a good student, never really missed class, but I wasn't really challenged. And so I think I just did decent work, and the SAT scores were horrible.
Oh, they didn't reflect what you could do because you're like, I'm not being challenged. Here's the bare minimum, kind of.
Well, and it was also one of those things where it's a standardized test. Like it's just like how much preparation are you really getting for it? I'm a first generation college student. My parents weren't paying for me to take extra SAT prep courses or any of that. So I just went because I knew it was what had to be done. And so because of the time when I was applying to colleges, they would look at your SAT scores and your GPA and determine if you were college material. And at the time, I had a pretty decent GPA and a really low SAT score. So I was rejected from every school that I had applied for. And that was hard because, again, when I talk about myself, I reflect on my parents and their sacrifices. And all mommy and papi wanted me to do was go to college. And now it's like my time to go to college and I can't get accepted anywhere. And so, uh, so I kept getting letters to do like a summer program, summer program, summer program. And I was gonna graduate high school. I didn't want to have to do a summer program. And so there was, in Hartford, there was the Latino Expo. And so Ray Hernandez from Student Affairs was there. And he was at a desk, and my dad is a social butterfly. And my dad walks up to him and is like, "Oh, yeah, my daughter applied to Central, and my nephew just graduated from there." And my cousin was really involved with Lasso and RA, Dennis Luciano.
Dennis was your
Luciano is my
cousin?
cousin, yeah.
Oh my
So you see
God.
how the reaction, so everybody thought of that, of Dennis like that. So when my dad made that connection with Ray, Ray was like, "Oh, like here's my business card, email me, etc." So I went ahead and I emailed Ray and I told him, "Listen, I haven't heard back." And literally within 2 weeks, I get an offer to interview at Central for a summer program. And so that is where I met Leah Skinner, who is currently an advisor here at Central. She's amazing. She was an admissions counselor at the time. And so she interviewed me and she said, I she just asked me some questions and she said, "I think you have the motivation to be here and the desire." She's like, "I'm not gonna look at your SAT scores, that's why we brought you in." And so she offered me this Latino Comcast program and she did a great job selling it because again, I had been offered to do summer programs, but there were fees associated with it, or and again, I think I only applied to 3 or 4 schools at the time. And so that's how I did the Latino Comcast program. So I was on campus for 5 weeks. I graduated like June 17th, July 1st, I was on campus, and we spent 5 weeks doing academic preparation. So
Is that different from a lot different from the EOP or similar?
yeah, so it's similar and different. They're both trio-like programs to provide students of first generation and low income backgrounds an opportunity to attain higher education. So EOP tend to be a larger group, and I think they had a little more academic concerns than the Latino Comcast program. And so in the Latino Comcast program too, the group was split. So some people were just doing it to earn college credit. They had already been accepted into the university. And then some of us were doing it because we had to prove that we were college material, college ready. And so, again, some of my best friends are from that program and that cohort, and we had a really good time. I was able to live on campus. So, knew like what to bring to campus once I lived in the fall semester. Was familiar with the university because we had this space. The Latin and Caribbean Center was a really big part of our summer program because they were a sponsor of Dr. Donis at the time, was director of the Latin and Caribbean Center and oversaw that program, the Latino Podcast program. So yeah, it was, I earned the college credit and then I earned admission into the university. And so Leah at the time offered me a job to be her student worker because I had that as part of my financial aid. And so I worked with her for 4 years and she's my mentor, my best friend, someone that, at the age of 17 saw something in me that the system didn't see. And she really invested her time and her energy in supporting me. So.
So, can you like give us some tips as a first generation student? Because I'm a first generation student in college, high school, and middle school.
Oh, wow.
So navigating this whole process by myself is so hard. So you are a first generation student, college, so can you give us some tips?
Yeah. So I think what y'all are doing now, getting connected is so important. Getting connected and asking questions, because we're here to support students, Most people who work in higher education aren't doing it because we're making millions of dollars, right? We're doing it because we truly do have a passion for student success and for supporting students. And so I always say, ask the question because you're not supposed to know, right? And so, but then sometimes if you don't know what questions to ask, you're like, well, what am I supposed to be asking? So I always say, get connected, find a mentor, because those are the people that can help guide you through this process and remind you of certain dates. And we have a first year connected program. Are you involved with that?
I was.
You were, okay, yeah. So there are, different support groups on campus that are trying to really help our first year students. And so to me, it was just connecting with folks, working hard. And again, I wanted to make my mom and my dad proud. So remember your why. That was my why. My why was to make mommy and papi proud and to earn my degree. So on a Friday night when everyone was going out and I had to make a decision, it was, what was my why? Would mommy and papi be happy that I went to this party on a Friday night and I had all this homework to do? Probably not. So then I opted not to. But my dad was a designated driver. Oh, I would call Bobby and be like, Bobby, we want to go to the club in Hartford. Can you come pick us up? And my dad would come pick us up and then drop us off. And then when the club was done, we'd pick us up at the corner, bring us back to campus. So yeah, I would say getting involved, and then giving yourself grace because you're navigating this by yourself, right? And so it can get frustrating and you can feel overwhelmed. And so I always tell my students to just take a step back and just recognize that you're here, that you belong here, and that it's okay to be overwhelmed. It's okay to be stressed out. But don't dwell on that for too long, right? What can we do to get out of this rut? What can we do to find support? And that's where I always tell students, just ask the question. Because if I don't know, then I can find a colleague on campus that can support you in that way.
Your major.
Mm. It was a sociology major.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm taking sociology classes and I'm just involved
Mm.
with the class I'm actually learning. It's like something that I look forward to.
So, yes, exactly. I started off college thinking I wanted to be. So do you guys watch Law and Order SVU? That's
I
what
don't watch it religiously, but I've seen it.
I wanted to be Detective Olivia so bad. And I was like, I have to be a major in criminology. And so I came to college to major in criminology and I had to take a law enforcement class. Part of the class was a ride along that you had to do. And so on that ride along, I realized I don't like the dark. I'm scared of the dark. It's actually a very lonely profession because you're usually by yourself. And I didn't trust myself. Like, don't give me a gun. Don't give me any of that because if I hear anything, I'm super scared. And I just didn't like the feeling. I felt very uptight and nervous. And so, of course, being first generation, having that conversation with my family, they're just like, okay, well, my mom, be a teacher, right? Because everyone has to be a teacher. And so, even taking that class, I realized like, I get it. I don't know how I'm supposed to teach you to get it. Like I'm doing the mental math, I figured it out, but I couldn't articulate and teach someone how to
That
get
is
there.
my problem because was it last year? My mother said apply to be like a peer tutor or peer mentor. I'm here like no. My every gut instinct was to me, don't do it. Because the way I get to certain conclusions, it's not a straight line. It's a zigzag, it's a circle, it's whatever to get to that point.
Exactly. It's so true. And so I said, nah, I don't think this is gonna work for me. And then I took a sociology class. And again, talking about that comic strip that happens, that's what made me start thinking and reflecting about my identity as a Latina. And so I took a class and we were talking about the US Census and how being Latina was not considered a race. And that pissed me off because I didn't want to have to check off that I was white or other. And I'm like, no, I'm Puerto Rican, like I'm a Latina. And that really, really triggered me. And having those conversations in those classes I was killing it. I liked the reading. It was easy for me. So I opted to be a sociology major purely on passion and the professors because they were very supportive and I felt like I was learning about myself and that was really part of my development. And I mean, my mom thought I was a social work major, so it's cute. She'll tell everyone, "Oh, she's a social worker." No, I'm in sociology. And it's so funny because it's around this time of year. I went home. I was taking a sociology class, and we were talking about gender roles. And it was Thanksgiving break, and I went home, and I thought I was gonna tell my mom like, "I'm not sitting in the kitchen. I want to go watch the game with the boys. Like, I'm not conforming to your gender roles." And she was like, go in the kitchen and go season that meat or go clean those dishes or whatever. And it was during that time that I just was really exposed to the academia world of my life. Like I was reading stuff that was about me, about my dad, about my mother, and I had never had that experience. So I chose sociology purely just because it was my passion. I had no idea what I was going to do with a career. And so um, and when, again, my friends and I were studying and we would be in the Latin Caribbean Center, doing homework, they were all so stressed out. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to read this book. And I was writing my notes and I was so intrigued by what I was reading that to me, it wasn't so difficult. And it paid off, I graduated in 4 years. Um, I did earn the President's Citation Award, which is one of the highest awards that's handed to graduating seniors, and there was only 4 of us that received that. Um, I was on Dean's List. I joined the Honor Society for the sociology department. So again, I think when you really truly find your passion, everything else just falls into place. And so again, the student that wasn't accepted because she had low SAT scores, ended up being the one that graduated on time with honors. And so I say that very humbly because statistically, I shouldn't be where I am right now, right? If we were reading things on paper and you did a paper review of me, I wouldn't be a director of an academic center supporting student athletes, right? So, so yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about your job, like your favorite parts and the hardest?
yeah. So I provide academic support for student athletes. So my favorite part are my students. They're fun. My guys, my basketball team makes me feel really short, and I've never felt short in my entire life. And even now with my daughter, I feel like she just has an extended group of cousins or brothers and sisters that look out for her when she comes on campus. They're really engaged with her, and so they're an extension of my family. Who I am with them is who I am with my daughter, with my siblings, with my nieces and my nephews. So that's my favorite part of the job is supporting students and then seeing them not only do well academically, but to see them compete, right? That's why they're here. The most challenging job is still, looking at a system and seeing some of the flaws and advocating for my brown and black students and seeing that, we get them here, but how are we really supporting them? And so, uh, and then just, you have that sociological lens and you see things differently because you are trained to see systems and you are trained to see oppression and you are trained to see equality issues. And so now that I have a seat at the table, I'm able to voice that and to really share that with administrators or my colleagues and challenge systems, not challenge people, but challenge the system, right? What are we doing to eliminate this? Or what are we doing to empower our students? And so that is challenging. And then also just motivating students sometimes, right? When they're losing, it's hard to like wake up and physically, right, gives your all to a sport and you don't have that winning record. And so that gets challenging sometimes, but I pray with my students. I feed my students. I send them text messages just to let them know I care and that I see them. I always have an open space. So my office is an open door space where any student can come. And if they have to talk about something, um, they can feel comfortable coming to see.
Do they use the learning center and other services that the university provides? Or do they have tutors, separate tutors? How does
Yeah,
that
so
work?
no, we are very collaborative, and so we have great relationships with different departments on campus, and so we really encourage students to seek that support. And so part of it too is we offer kind of student development, and so we have different departments come to them during their team workshops to have conversations, whether it be about counseling and wellness, the learning center, study skills, career services, so that they're exposed to the different centers on campus. Because we're only, right, I'm only one person. I have a staff, 2 full-time advisors. We're doing so much and we know we have great resources on campus, so we really do try to connect them with other people on campus.
Like, to balance out their schedules and all that, they get help from you directly, or
Yeah.
does the learning center help with that? Or
So the way, I mean, with their schedules, like time management, we really understand it the most because we understand their schedule,
Mhm.
right? And so, like our cross-country team, they wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning so that they can have breakfast, a light breakfast, and run for like 2 hours by 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And then they work out, they condition with our strength and conditioning coach, and then they go to classes, then study hall. And then they have like extracurricular activities. So we help with the time management part, but when it comes to scheduling classes, they still meet with their faculty advisor. We're just the one that fill in the, it's a puzzle piece. All that's scheduling, right? It's just figuring out what are my core classes, what are my priorities in life, whether it be work, family, for them, athletic events. And so we kind of do all of that together. But yeah, it's just, it's very collaborative. That's what all I say is that we really work well with athletics. We work well with our faculty advisors, our school-based advisors, and then ultimately, we're the folks that kind of put everything together, and we know the students. So we know their strengths and their weaknesses. With my men's basketball team, I have relationships with their families, right? So they're really involved with that process too. And so, and then with student athletes, there's a component of the NCAA, so they have to have certain requirements. Because that system has requirements for them, and so we have to make sure that they're eligible. So that they can compete.
GPA is part of it?
GPA, amount of credits, they can't just take classes just to take classes, because they have to meet certain percentages throughout their 4 years. So by the end of their sophomore year, they have to have 40% of their degree requirements met. And so if you're a junior and you decide you want to change your major, if those credits don't count towards that major, you have to make a decision. Am I going to play this sport or am I going to pursue this career or major? So, so yeah, it's a very intrusive advising style that we have, but appreciative advising where we really do try to get to know our students and get to know what their strengths are and play off of that. Because if we're always reminded of our weaknesses, then that becomes a negative cycle and we start to believe that we're not meant to be here. And so we really do a strength-based approach. Yeah.
Any more questions? That's all, okay?
It's on that level.
No more questions?
Yeah, I think we're all set, but thank you so much. for
Of
coming.
course, thank you guys. I appreciate it.